Hello and welcome to a special edition of Polotiki brought to you by News 24. My name is Mahlatse Gallens. We are on day 2 of the ANC's National Policy Conference. We are live coming to you from the Nasrec Expo Center south of Johannesburg. As you know, this whole week until next week Wednesday, the ANC is having its policy conference, a different policy conference compared to other years because they have dedicated 2 days of these conference to try and renew the party. They have identified the crisis that is within the party, and that crisis ranges from all sorts of things. They've talked about factions that are a permanent feature of the ANC. They've also talked about vote buying that is used especially in elective conferences. They've also talked about state capture, and that is what delegates behind closed doors are deliberating as we speak. We're expecting that conversation to continue until late into the evening. Of course, what comes out of it, we will know only when it ends. Earlier on here on Polotiki, we spoke to the ANC's Treasurer General, Zweli Mkhize. We had a sit down with him, and we were asking him about how the debates are going behind the scenes. Very much, and welcome to Polotiki. The main thing today has been around the diagnostic report that was presented by the Secretary General, Gwede Mantashe. Do you think the ANC was being frank enough in identifying the challenges that it's facing?
Very frank. I think you must check from the President's input. His address did not shy away from the thorny issues that face the organization. The Secretary General's report went further into those details, and the subsequent presentations, particularly the one that's on organizational renewal, was basically calling on the ANC to take for each of the ills that we have identified to come with a solution. And we are now saying for the next 2 days, the delegates must focus on the solutions, each of these issues that are raised. So when we start with the issues of factions, what do we do? The issue of lobbying for leadership, what do we do? There are now suggestions that are saying we need to open this up so that the people who are being nominated must not be, lobbied for by people who are, doing it on an underground basis. It needs to be dealt with openly.
So maybe an open contest like we see, for example, with the American system.
Yes, I would say more like what the Chama Pinduzi of Tanzania does, where they basically would say all those who want to contest, they must come up. And when they do, then they look at them and they say, well, we don't think that your image is such that it will be good for the organization, so you can't go in. And then the others will be told, go and talk to your members and ask. Let them ask the questions. Who are you? What have you been doing? What are you going to do for us? Why should you do this? Why should we elect you? And so on and so on. It's going to be a very interesting discussion.
It's definitely a break in tradition because the tradition of the ANC was that, you are asked by others to serve.
Yes, it is indeed. In a way, it's not very different, except this time we're going to say if we want to nominate so and so, call him. Let's talk to them and understand what they're all about. But what I think is good on this discussion is that it's actually trying to avoid a sense of anonymity in the way that people get to be proposed. It needs to be put on the table, and therefore, instead of this discussion starting much later, it might start much earlier.
I just want to go back to the diagnostic report, though, TG. One of the things that you talk about as a threat is this issue of the regime change agenda. Some have said this is just paranoia on the side of the ANC.
No, I don't think it's paranoia on the side of the ANC. I think the issue of any other groups and forces who are interested in the ANC being removed from power is a reality. Otherwise, there will not be any politics. So that's one issue. But we are saying that that's one problem. The major issues that we want to solve are the issues that are within our hands, that are caused by our own behavior, the way we deal with each other, the way we deal with our assignment, the way we deal with the people that we represent. Those are the issues that we must focus on correcting.
One of the issues it also talks to is this whole debate around state capture. I think this is the first time I've seen a name of a family find itself in the documents of the ANC. The issue of state capture linked to the Gupta family dominates parts of that. And one of the things that it's saying is that those that are implicated should actually own up. Waiting for a judicial commission of inquiry to investigate, would that not take too long for the ANC?
Well, it depends. If anybody feels that they might want to own up onto the thing, onto the issue, I don't think we can stop them. But what we want to avoid is a situation where there's a contestation on the facts, the veracity of the reports that are published in the media. If we have a to and fro kind of exchange, is it true, is it not true, is it fake news, is it real? It doesn't help us anywhere. We don't want to be bogged down with that. We need a platform that will be able to deal with the issues, clinically, dispassionately, and tell us what they find as facts. This is the finding, and so on. Then that way, we don't have to contest the facts. The question is going to be, what is true, what is not true, what are the findings, what are not the findings. If you're not happy with those findings, you can take them further to court, and then you can get your issues cleared up there. But for the ANC to take action on a matter like that decisively is tricky, because you cannot take you cannot charge somebody and decide on them on something that you cannot prove on your own, process of leading evidence.
And obviously, this is part of the reasons or the things that you've linked that are putting the distance between yourself and the electorate, because there's continuous harm to the brand ANC, and especially towards the 2019 elections. Do you not risk that harm continuing, especially because the president is still challenging aspects of the public protector's finding on the state capture report?
Well, I think that we have got clearer processes now. If there's going to be a commission, it's easy to know that this is what we're going to wait for the final outcome and conclusions on the matter. When the issue has to be taken to court, it has to be taken to court. We had agreed much earlier that anyone who feels that they have to take the issue up for review must do so. And so that process we can't really challenge as such. The question at the end of the day is that these members, these delegates who are here, must propose solutions for the people, for the benefit of all those members who are wanting to see certain things corrected. And at the end of the day, what is important is how open our delegates are and how open our branches are. So there's actually no need to even expect that we need a clandestine process of dealing with our own ills, because our members are upfront. They don't go about, beat about the bush. They are upfront, and so the issues that were raised by the Secretary General and the President are issues that have come from our own structures. And the fact that the delegates are here, they're going to face up to those issues, frankly.
Have the delegates confronted the ANC in terms of how it has handled many of these crises facing the ANC and in particular the president?
It's going to come up in the discussions. They're open. They have to tell us what they think. And look, at the end of the day, this is how we account. And so they're going to be saying, if they think that we handle this properly, not properly, then they'll be able to tell us all of that.
Let's throw forward as we let you go, TG. It is a policy conference. We are a country with an economy in crisis, unemployment rate the highest in 14 years. Actually, more alarming is that we have more people on social grants than we have those that are in formal employment. But there seems to be a battle about who is the enemy, white monopoly capital or just monopoly capital. Can South African get any confidence that this conference will emerge with things that can resolve their day-to-day challenges?
Look, I think the issue of monopoly capital is an expression in terms of what we have seen as an issue that we have to deal with as a challenge in terms of the way the ownership of the economy is structured and all of that. Now, the fact that in South Africa the dominance in the ownership of the economy is wide means we don't have to spend too much time fighting about its wide monopoly capital or monopoly capital. The fact that we were able to put up a competition commission to actually deal with the monopolistic tendencies, the anti-competitive behavior, that's one of the very major steps towards dealing with dealing with the concentration in the ownership. Now we are saying let's look at more approaches that will open up the economy so that there's a much broader base of expertise, of talents, of entrepreneurs that will be able to participate in the opening and ownership, broadening of ownership, deracializing the economy. So it's an important issue. The issue of the semantics, I think we can put it aside. The core of it is about broadening and deracializing the ownership and the systems of running the economy.
I hope that it does go as quickly as you're proposing, given that has been the conversation that has dominated the news in the past week. And last one, we've just had one of your colleagues, NEC member Mkhabela, saying there should be a referendum referendum on the land question, whether we should amend the constitution to allow for expropriation without compensation. Would you agree with that?
Well, we've got a conference to discuss all those views. There are many views here, but they are actually correct to be expressed inside the commission. So we'll deal with the views when we come in there.
And as a last one, what are you hoping this conference will do for the party?
One, it should consolidate unity and must create clarity on a number of policy positions, and it must help us to move towards the conference in December, being able to find a formula that will unite the ANC, assist in creating growth, bringing employment and job creation up, as well as ensuring the transformation of the economy.
Thank you very, very much. That was the Treasurer General of the ANC, Zweli Mkhize, joining us here on Politiki as we continue the coverage
to
us a little bit earlier.
Gentlemen,
that was the TG of the party. To our audiences, I'm now joined by our resident analyst, Mathekga, and Mpumelelo Mkhabela. He's talking about consolidating unity. I saw one of you shaking, shaking their head there. But he believes that this is going to be a consolidation of unity.
No, I think that is wishful thinking. And I think he's aware of that. I mean, listening to the interview, he's trying by all means to say that there is an environment for robust debates within the party, what is happening within the commission, that people are robustly engaging on these ideas. But that is not what you actually hear when you talk to some other members whom you can say are openly and unashamedly part of the factions that are happening within the ANC. If there is anything to be consolidated here, it will not be unity. Maybe consolidating the differences, contradiction in terms. I don't think there is unity to consolidate.
And of course, the factions played out yesterday already with this diagnostic report by the Secretary General, Gwede Mantashe, where those that were clearly aligned to President Jacob Zuma wanted to shut it down. And seemingly simply because it was talking about state capture and specifically mentioning the Gupta family that President Jacob Zuma has regarded as his friends.
Well, that's the clearest indication that the Gupta issue is very divisive in the ANC. It is dividing members of the ANC along provincial lines as well as, along other different lines. So that's why you would have the diagnostic report of the Secretary General. Just because it mentions certain things that people are not comfortable about around the Guptas, it suddenly gets bogged down into a debate whether or not it should be tabled in the first place. And then those differences suddenly emerge. So in the context of what Zweli Mkhize is saying, I mean, I find it fascinating because he says he's talking about consolidating of unity. You can't consolidate something that doesn't exist, firstly. And secondly, the issue of unity, which even Zuma spoke about, and he also refers to it, it's a bit controversial because unity around what? Because I think all the delegates that are here and all ANC members are united around the fact that they all like the ANC.
They are members of the ANC.
Yeah, they're united about that. And they're united about the fact that they want the ANC to succeed. But what are the issues that unite them beyond the mere sentiment that they are members of the ANC, beyond the fact that they are card-carrying members of the ANC, beyond the fact that they've paid their 12 rand? I'm not sure that that's still the membership.
I think it's still about 12 rand in this economy.
Yes. So beyond the 12 rand membership that unites them of like being members, are they united around the fact that they must protect certain people that are doing wrong and harming the ANC?
No.
For the sake of, whatever. Should they, that's the issue. It becomes a very controversial issue. So people must be very clear when they talk about unity. The ANC must emerge united around the fight against corruption. But it doesn't end there. When the conference ends, there must be steps taken almost immediately, practical, to show that they are united around something that's really noble.
And, I mean, the divisions have intensified over the years. I think for us, we saw them playing out 2007 at the Polokwane conference, where it was President Jacob Zuma versus President Thabo Mbeki, and we've seen it just escalate over the years. 2012, of course, it was Kgalema Motlanthe versus Jacob Zuma, and now we are going to another process, which is CR17 versus NDZ 17. And Zweli suggesting that the idea of an open contest is being enjoyed by the delegates. I mean, can we see an ANC opening up its elective process to that extent?
I mean, they have to. A lot of people have been calling for that, even observers. We have, in various platforms, been saying that the ANC has to open up this thing. You cannot rely on that discipline of the past. You've got to acknowledge the ambition of the type of cadre that you attract these days, what will be their ambitions and so forth. So you have to open it up. There is no other way. Of course, it's not going to help now. If they are going to decide to reform their internal processes, they will have to agree on this resolution later this year in their elective conference. What that means is that it could only help them in the future. I think that maybe they can come up with an ad hoc arrangement out of this. What's wrong with them saying that, you know, we have decided, our constitution allow us to, maybe on the basis of urgency of the matter, we have decided that we are going to open up this. Remember, they don't have to do anything to open this. All they have to do is to declare
because
that
it's
anyone
already
who wants
open.
to run.
It's
exactly.
already open.
Yeah. And if they can do that for me, it will actually alleviate that pressure. You start knowing what ideas people stand for. And Zweli Mkhize is speaking about individuals who might have ambitions that they will be sent to the branches to explain themselves. That for me will take away this secrecy, and it will also take away illicit influence of money in the manner in which the ANC elective processes are being run. You will open it up, you will start knowing what people stand for, maybe who even funds them in their campaign and so forth. So they have to do that.
And Mpumi, I mean, this is one election where the presidential campaigns are increasing in terms of those that are presidential hopefuls. I think at the moment we're counting around about 7, 8. I mean, it's Cyril Ramaphosa, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, we've seen Lindiwe Zulu, we've seen Jeff Khadebe, we've seen Matthews Posa, there's some who still want Kgalema Motlanthe to come back and contest. Who am I leaving out? Yeah. But you know, this was one where, was it Gwede Mantashe who said...
himself is in the running.
Mkhize himself is in the running. Mkhize himself is in the running. You know, do you think that would help if they were to have this ad hoc arrangement where they say, let's open it up, everybody who wants to be the president, go and tell the branch delegates why you're with it?
Yeah, it would be helpful if these new reforms that they are talking about, electoral reforms in the ANC, were to kick in as soon as possible. But obviously, I think that's unlikely because they will probably want to keep the tradition of having the electoral conference in Polokwane approve them, which means the next round of contestations at the branch level, I hope it's for branches as well, at the branch level, at the regional level, at the provincial conferences, whatever's going to follow after December. If this decision is taken, then it will be subject to the new rules of election. I think it's a good idea, although it's a belated one. The ANC should have long discussed electoral reforms internally because it's no longer a liberation movement, although they claim they are, but in truth, they are a political party, and its leaders, once the leaders are in government, they're exposed to all manner of power, access to resources and all of that. So that obviously creates an environment where people are ambitious. People have ambition. So a discussion that balances the ambition of the individual vis-a-vis party interest, vis-a-vis the interest of the country would be a good discussion.
Yeah, it's great. You know, you can have the leaders come out and say why they're good, but you've got this issue of vote buying. And, you know, that it doesn't eliminate that within the ANC. And that's why we had the Eastern Cape suggesting, for example, that all million, I don't think there are, how many are there, 700,000 or so ANC members should then be able to directly vote for who should become president. What did you guys make of that idea?
Well, the reality is that as long as you are involved in election in any modern society, there will always be the influence of money within that. And the best way to deal with this is not to deny that it will exist. It is to try to regulate it. I mean, we have these processes in other countries where you have a cap that is being stated on how much you can spend within a party and so forth. And money will always be a factor, but what you do to try to level the playing field, to make sure it doesn't become unduly the deciding factor. You provide regulatory mechanism. But openness for me, openness can actually neutralize the illicit use of money now. You will have money being used, but not in the same crass manner. And if you actually adopt better processes, you can actually have a situation where each and every candidate can be allowed to use money to a certain extent. Because elections are expensive. Even internal elections are expensive. It is unrealistic to think of a situation where money will have no impact at all. The only thing you can do is to manage its impact by leveling the playing field so that each and every candidate can have a near equal opportunity to be able to participate. So it is the future we are talking about. It is where society is going, and the best way, you just have to regulate accordingly instead of denying that money will have an impact. I've heard people within the ANC saying the cadre under Owar Tambo and so forth. Even Owar Tambo acknowledged that once you are in power, money is going to impact. So you've got to adjust your system to deal with that.
So do you think that that would work in terms of minimizing vote buying as we've seen it?
It would work, but in my view, what would even work better if these reforms are very comprehensive? It's not just about avoiding the use of money or abusing the use of money to influence election of candidates or buying branches. It should also be about the criteria of who passes the test from the electoral college or whatever mechanism is used to sift through people that qualify to go and campaign openly. It's unfortunate the ANC now has to follow the DA. The DA is leading in that regard because what the DA has done is that it has opened up for people, if you want to apply to be a member of the DA to go to parliament, you are subjected to a normal meritocratic interview. So what that does, it allows the party to absorb people as soon as possible who can rise to leadership. It was not long that my money was in the ANC. He always talk about how he used to vote for the ANC. And as soon as he crossed to the DA, he qualified according to the interview they conducted with him. He became a leader. And, the ANC still has archaic ideas about you have to be 10 years in the party as a member before you can rise. That stifles renewal because somebody who's enjoying a good career out there in the private sector. If I decide
I want to leave journalism,
who could potentially be the best president to carry and lead the ANC and implement its policies in government, is thinking, I can't be a member of the branch for 10 years. I'd rather run my business. And then as a result, the ANC is losing out on continuous renewal. So these reforms around elections must be very comprehensive if they were to succeed.
One of the suggestions that is being debated is this issue of a revolutionary electoral commission. But at the moment, you have mistrust because the idea was that the veterans and the stalwarts would then sit in this commission. But now you've heard people like Fikile Mbalula saying that, you know, they are also influenced by money. So who sits in that revolutionary electoral commission, Ralph?
I mean, you can call it revolutionary or whatever. I mean, whatever you want to prefix that, it doesn't make a difference for me. What you are talking about is an electoral commission that can actually manage processes. And as Mpumelelo is saying, if that commission is part of that wider renewal within the party, it can work, it can actually succeed. Calling it revolutionary doesn't mean it's going to work better than just an ordinary electoral. South Africa is known to be...
It's a liberation movement. They have to throw in the revolutionary language in there.
Mahlatse, that's being nostalgic. That's actual. That is one of the reasons why the ANC is landlocked in this revolutionary. No one is contesting the incredible 98-year history of the ANC as the leader of the Liberal. No one is contesting that. Actually, people often say that you have done well. Can't you just look into your system to regain some of those values? So revolutionary, non-revolutionary, what you need is a functional electoral system. South Africa has got a lot of that. We do have the IEC. There are many things. If they want, we can volunteer to put together a system for them.
I think we should, the three of us should be in that I want revolutionary, the name to stay though. If I'm going to be in that commission, I'm
No, the path is not revolutionary or not. The issue is whether you are static or dynamic. Whether you are conservative or you are evolving. So the ANC has to get out of that space of being conservative about its old ideals and realize that they are now in the new terrain, in the world of globalization, in the world where South Africa, like all other African countries, are getting younger and younger. So we can't afford to have a situation where as we get younger and younger, you're getting the leadership being older and older. Then there's
and speaking a language that the millennials don't understand.
Exactly. So these electoral reforms they're talking about must be about allowing young people to take leadership. In France, we have a 39-year-old president.
And very quickly
the
just
ANC,
rose.
which has a tradition of a youth league, that was formed in the 1940s by Mandela and his youthful people still can't have a youthful president.
I still think that's a country issue though, Mkhabela, because if you do the calculation, you are going to find out that the average age of a leader in South Africa is 61.
Yeah.
Yes, across all that, you do the calculation.
Between the IFP, the UDM, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. which makes our politics a bit less interesting and less dynamic, because young people think politicians are boring. These people are old and all of that. And the young people that happen to be in politics, it would appear as if it's because they've run out of options in life. You don't want that. You want people who are prepared to leave their lucrative jobs because they think they can make a bigger contribution in the direction of the country. And then politics gets more interesting.
One of the issues also is around expanding. Usually we talk about it as a top 6 of the ANC. Now there's some that are talking top 9, there's some that are talking top 7, 2 extra DSGs, 1 extra deputy president. Obviously, it flows from the conversations that the provincial secretaries and the chairpersons have been having as part of trying to manage the contestation towards December. But are we getting an idea about, with these extra positions, what will be strengthened at Luthuli House?
You know, it's one thing to reform your institutions, to reform your structures. It's quite another to try to be accommodative to the crisis. For me, this thing of coming up with a bloated top 6 just because a few people are angry and you want to make sure that they don't go home before the conference ends. You want to expand this. It doesn't solve a problem. It only accommodates the current crisis that you have. What's next then? In the next set of a cycle of crisis, you are now going to have 15 members to becoming a top 6. Even the contradiction within that is that the people who are saying you need to expand the top 6, there are some, the ANC youth leader who said that actually they're thinking of contracting, downsizing the NEC.
Yeah, and
what exactly?
And this is just in 2007. It
Exactly.
was about let's expand the NEC, and that's how we got to the figure of 86. Now it seems like now people are saying let's reduce it. What does that solve?
That's what happened when you're not thinking deeply, but you improvise every day.
But it all boils down, it's not about size, honestly. It's just about quality. You can even use the example in government. When Zuma took over, he thought that the problem was that the cabinet is too small for me to deliver. In his concept of deliver, you need a bigger government to deliver. It doesn't always follow that a bigger government delivers. Sometimes a bigger government gets more bureaucratic, not easy to take decisions, it becomes less efficient, and it eats a lot of resources. It actually traps resources instead of releasing them to the public, because a bigger bureaucracy, a bigger cabinet consumes a lot of taxpayers' money.
And
So-
the ANC is struggling even financially. I'm just wondering, how do you actually pay extra permanent people in the ANC?
So, well, in the context of the top 6, I think the NEC was expanded in Polokwane, as well as the NWC was made slightly bigger than usual. Now, the fact that people, I know people don't always attend meetings in the NWC. I don't know now when you expand it how you expect people to attend, because you know it doesn't solve the problem. The issue of the ANC is that you have to inject dynamism, you have to inject a bit of energy, and you can do that even with a lean and efficient structure. For as long as it is accountable to the branches, it's not accountable to its own other private interests that we've seen now that have hijacked the ANC. So for me, that should be the issue.
Before we move from the organizational renewal, a lot of the leaders we've been speaking to are talking about trying to avoid a contest at the December elective conference. Supra Mahumapelu, the Premier of the Northwest, earlier suggested that they would ideally not want to have a contest. We already know that there has been talks to Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and to Cyril Ramaphosa to ask who would be willing to back down and take the deputy president. As far as we understand, they've both said it's the presidency or nothing. What are the chances of seeing this unified slate going forward?
It takes a great deal of work to arrive at a position where you are saying that you don't want a contest, and you actually convince those candidates, those who are on respective lists, to form a single list. It requires a compromise. You can't just call for it. You have to start with a conference such as this, where actually you have a unifying value within the ANC. I mean, a short while ago, you were saying that it looks like what brings a lot of ANC members together is that 12 friends membership and so forth. What is it that is beyond, or that is what one can say is above this factional interest that will allow people to think about moving away from those factions and putting the ANC forward? That if you don't have that unifying value within the ANC that can push people to a compromise. Some are not. Some are still in denial that actually after if they don't elect a credible leader in 2017 December, the party might actually lose 2019. There are still those who are in denial. But I think that you know, as some people define democracy, that if you lose election twice consecutively as a party, you're going to think. I think until the ANC maybe loses election, it will never be in a position where they see the value of a compromise. It remains just a threat that they're saying is being pushed by, you know, third agenda and so forth. Owning up, that is for me the most important towards that compromise.
Mpumelelo, are you also not optimistic about a unified slate?
Well, the problem is that it shouldn't be about having a unified slate, because you stifle members from choosing people. People must contest openly. The difficulty with the ANC is that it hasn't built a sufficient democratic culture whereby you contest, I contest, and you win, I congratulate you, and you might need me after the elections for deployment elsewhere,
post,
and you might need all the people that were in my campaign team because you value the skills that they may have, and you use them because this is one political party. But what they have done, and this has happened since Polokwane, the party, within the party, there's a two-party system. If party A within the system, if faction A wins, it's a winner takes all. All the other people are purged. They are purged in government, they are purged in state-owned enterprises, they are purged from the party, they are purged from branches, because this other one says figil. It's like, you know, it's like our turn. You know, in Polokwane, I remember they said this on the chiga chiga, the tela abanye. So when these ones come in, the others must make way. So that's a two-party system within one party. That's not healthy. It's okay in a broader country thing where it's the DA versus the ANC or EFF versus the whatever the party is.
So maybe a unified slate might help to keep the ANC together. Would it be good for South Africa if the ANC emerges with a unified slate?
If each group understands and appreciates its vulnerability on its own, that a win by Cyril, for example, suppose we consider him and Dlamini Zuma front runners, that a win by Cyril will not be sufficient on its own, and a win by Dlamini Zuma will not be sufficient. That will mean they acknowledge vulnerability of each. And then for that purpose, if they actually get together, given the crisis that the ANC has caused, remember, we are investment. Most of these are the doing of the ANC. All this thing that is the global economy thing, it's not true. It's because of the policy flip-flopping of the ANC and lack of certainty. So if they own up to that problem, and then they can then say that the best we can do for South Africa is actually to bring these leaders together and make sure we come up with one unified slate. Remember, it's a crisis management strategy. It's not a way to go. For a long term, you still need to reform the structures of the organization. But to deal with the current crisis and acknowledging to South Africans that we are all in it, we'll try to fix it as the ANC. If they can do that, that would be the best.
But what is at stake is a bit difficult, because, you know, some have said what happens at December determines if others go to jail or don't. So that's when I'm asking, is a unified slate good for South Africa?
Well, it's not good if it's going to lead to compromises on the rule of law. You go back to the issue of unity that we talked about. United around what? If the unified slate is about, okay, comrades, let's unite so that after 2019, I don't go to jail because I've got all these small and skeletons. That's not good unity. That's not good unity. You'd rather be a contest. If the contest is going to help us cleanse the rot in the state. So if the unity is about not cleansing the rot, it's bad unity for the ANC, it's bad unity for the country.
I guess we now have to throw forward to what is happening tomorrow. That's when the policy conference officially gets underway. This is where the battle of ideas of what to do with the state of governance, the economy, we're expecting will be debated. And we had Jeff Radebe addressing the media a little earlier on. And the one question he was pressed repeatedly on is whether we're still on track for Vision 2030 as far as the National Development Plan goes. Ralph, were you satisfied with that answer there? He says we're still on track.
No, I'm not satisfied with the answer. The reality is that there is still a great deal of contestation, even within the alliance partners around the NDP. Government itself has wasted a great deal of opportunity. They should have implemented this thing to point to certain things now. You know, when you come up with a policy such as that, which relatively, compared to other policies, compared to the gear, at least the NDP had a little bit of consensus. Because I too was worried, no doubt, South African Communist Party. But the thing is that if you have a near consensus policy such as that or vision such as that, then you don't implement it. 5 years down the line, you are actually opening up opportunities for people to come and criticize that. It's a lost opportunity. There isn't much that has been done around the NDP. Even members of ANC themselves in Parliament, we have seen a couple of weeks ago some members of Portfolio Committee raising questions in Parliament that this thing is not being implemented. What is it that government is doing? So you are wasting that opportunity. You are actually even opening up this thing for contest to a point where you will no longer have that grace period to actually implement this. So are we on track? No, I'm not satisfied.
Mpumi, are we on track?
No, we're not on track because the document has not been widely accepted as it should. The ANC and its alliance partners are divided over elements of it. So that's not good enough because we didn't start off on a good note. But besides, Parliament has not set up institutional mechanisms to hold the government or different departments and ministers to account on the implementation of the NDP. Yes, there are elements there and there. You often get briefings in Parliament. This is where we are and all of that. But I think Parliament as an institution has not sharpened its oversight mechanism on the implementation.
Even the Planning Commission has complained about that, where they're saying that, you know, priorities in terms of budget don't match what the NDP expects those particular ministries to actually do. I mean, does that mean we need a strengthened planning and monitoring office within the presidency?
You know, let's start with what's going on in Parliament. First of all, the law provides that there should be a budget office that needs to be set up there in Parliament with a director, fully staffed, so that they can actually deal with the proposal coming from the executive. You don't have a viable. Maybe I lost, maybe I've not been informed sufficiently on this, but I'm not aware of a fully existing budget office within Parliament. And also, there is a 2012 resolution on the NDP, which actually says that they need to be, government needs to adopt a set of legislations in the form of institutional infrastructure that is going to allow for the implementation of the NDP across the 3 spheres of government. That has not been done up to today. From the 2012 resolution on the NDP, you don't see very much. And Jeff was asked about it, Minister in the Presidency, was asked about the institutional infrastructure. And he seems to intimate that it is there. I'm not aware of any institutional infrastructure that actually is meant specifically to ensure the implementation of the NDP.
Yeah, one example to demonstrate that the NDP is actually not being implemented, or the critical elements of it are not implemented. Just last week we had a release of the Auditor General's reports that shows, you know, deteriorating audit findings on the use of public money on delivery of services. A lot of people, a lot of institutions, a lot of people in government are not following the procurement rules of the government. Now the Auditor General is even pleading to say perhaps Parliament should amend the Auditor General Act to give the Auditor General powers to make his recommendations to municipalities binding. He's doing that because he can see that from the Planning and Monitoring Evaluation Department of the Presidency, there's no consequences of people who do wrong things across the state. People just do as they wish. So that, for me, speaks to the deterioration of the competency of the state. And one of the provisions of the NDP is that the country needs to build a capable state that can deliver. So, but from the AG's findings, you can see that the state is deteriorating in its ability to manage state resources. So you can't talk about progress there. And Jeff, interesting enough, in this entire report that he presented this afternoon, he makes no mention of the audit findings.
That's just fresh on our minds. We're all alarmed about the money that they can't account for. And which speaks to governance issues. But obviously, we will be getting further into details as we get into the policy conference tomorrow, and hopefully we can, tease out a little bit more about some of the issues that we expect to come out. And of course, that is a wrap from us from day 2 of the ANC's National Policy Conference. Those were our resident analysts, Ralph Mathekga and Mpumelelo Mkhabela. We love hearing from you, so please get in touch with us via Facebook or social media at News 24. My name is Mahlatse Gallens, and this has been the special edition of Polotiki.